There are philosophical names for those dark thoughts you secretly agree with. Comment what time it is where you are. We're diving into them right now. Ring of Gyges. Picture yourself walking home late at night, and you find a mysterious ring lying on the ground. You slip it on, and suddenly you're invisible, completely undetectable. Nobody can see what you do. Nobody can catch you. Nobody will ever know. What's the first thing that crosses your mind? The ancient philosopher Plato called this the Ring of Gyges, and he asked a question that still haunts us today. If you could get away with absolutely anything, would you still be a good person? Most people immediately say, "Of course I would," but then they start imagining, walking into stores and taking what they want, sneaking into places they're not supposed to be, getting revenge on people who wronged them, and suddenly that confident yes becomes a very uncomfortable maybe. The disturbing truth, Plato believed, and deep down you probably agree, that morality isn't about being good, it's about being watched. We follow rules because we're afraid of consequences, not because we're genuinely moral beings. Think about it. When you're driving alone at 2 a.m. and there's nobody around, do you still stop at every red light? When the cashier gives you too much change and doesn't notice, do you always point it out? When you find someone's wallet with cash inside and nobody's watching, what do you really want to do? The Ring of Gyges forces you to confront something terrifying. That maybe, just maybe, you're only as good as your fear of getting caught. And once you realize this about yourself, you start seeing it everywhere in others too. Psychological egoism. You're scrolling through social media and you see your friend posting about their amazing volunteer work at the homeless shelter. Look how generous they are, helping those in need. What a selfless person. But wait, pause for a second. Why did they post about it? Psychological egoism says something most people hate to admit. Every single thing you do, every action you take, every selfless gesture is actually about you. Always. Your friend didn't volunteer to help homeless people. They volunteered to feel good about themselves, to get social recognition, to build their personal brand as a caring person. Even if they don't realize it, their brain is wired to seek personal benefit from everything they do. Sound harsh? Let's test it. When you donate to charity, aren't you buying that warm, fuzzy feeling inside? When you help your parents with groceries, aren't you avoiding the guilt you'd feel if you didn't? When you comfort a crying friend, aren't you maintaining a relationship that benefits you somehow? Even love, in love, the most selfless emotion we know, is actually selfish. You love people because of how they make you feel. You stay with your partner because being with them serves your needs. You care about your family because losing them would hurt you. The twisted part, even when you try to prove this wrong, you're still being selfish. You want to see yourself as a good person, so you act generously to protect your self-image. You literally can't escape your own self-interest. Watch yourself tomorrow. Every decision, every action, every word. Ask yourself, what am I really getting out of this? The answer will disturb you, because deep down, you already know it's true. We're all just sophisticated machines programmed to serve ourselves, while convincing ourselves we're noble and selfless. The others gaze. You're getting ready for work in the morning, standing in front of your closet, trying to decide what to wear. But who are you really dressing for? Right now, even though you're completely alone, your brain is imagining dozens of other people watching you, your co-workers judging your outfit, your crush noticing how you look, random strangers on the street forming opinions about who you are. Welcome to the most exhausting part of being human. You're constantly performing, even when there's no audience. French philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre called this the other's gaze. And it means you never actually get to be yourself, ever. Because there's always an invisible crowd in your head, watching everything you do. Think about it. When you're home alone, do you still fix your hair when you pass a mirror? Do you still pose slightly when taking a selfie, even if no one else will see it? Do you rehearse conversations in your head, imagining how others will react? You're not just living your life. You're directing a movie where everyone else is the audience, and you're desperately trying to get good reviews. The disturbing part, even your most private thoughts aren't really private. You're constantly editing them, wondering, what would people think if they knew I was thinking this? You can't even be authentic inside your own mind because you've internalized the judgment of others so deeply. Watch yourself today. Count how many times you adjust your behavior because you imagine someone watching. How you change your voice when answering the phone. How you sit differently when someone walks by. How you scroll through your social media posts before hitting share. You think you're free, but you're actually trapped in an invisible prison where the guards are everyone you've ever met, and the warden is you. Will to power. You're in a group conversation at work, and someone starts explaining a topic you know nothing about. But instead of listening and learning, your first instinct is to jump in with your own opinion, to show that you know something too. To prove you belong in the conversation. Why do you do that? Friedrich Nietzsche had a disturbing answer. Everything you do, every word you speak, every choice you make, every relationship you build, is secretly about one thing. Power. Not the obvious kind of power, like being a boss or a politician. Much more subtle than that. It's the power to feel important, to feel superior, to feel like you matter more than the person next to you. Watch yourself at a restaurant. When the waiter gets your order wrong, why do you get annoyed? Sure, you want the right food, but deeper than that, you want to feel like someone who deserves to have their orders followed correctly, someone whose wishes matter. When you correct someone's grammar in the comments, you're not helping them learn. You're showing everyone else that you're smarter. When you share that news article with your hot take, you're not informing people. You're positioning yourself as someone worth listening to. Even your kindness is a power move. When you help someone, you get to be the capable one, the generous one, the person who has enough resources to give. You literally feel bigger than them in that moment. The most disturbing part? Your brain is constantly ranking everyone around you. Who's more attractive, more successful, more popular, more interesting? And every interaction becomes a game where you're either winning or losing. Right now, watching this video, I'm smart of you is probably thinking, I'm smarter than people who don't know about these concepts. Even learning philosophy becomes a way to feel superior to others. You can't escape it. Because the will to power isn't something you have, it's something you are. Hard determinism. You wake up tomorrow morning and decide to grab coffee instead of tea. Simple choice, right? You're in control of your decisions. But what if? What if you never actually chose anything at all? Hard determinism says something that breaks most people's brains. Free will is a complete illusion. Every choice you think you're making, from what you eat for breakfast, to who you marry, to whether you're watching this video right now, was decided billions of years ago by the laws of physics. Picture your brain like an incredibly complex computer. When you decide to get coffee, your brain cells fire in specific patterns. But why do they fire that way? Because of the brain cells that fired a second before. And why did those fire? Because of the ones before that, and before that, and before that. Keep tracing it back. Your coffee choice was determined by your genetics, your childhood experiences, your hormone levels this morning, what you ate yesterday, the temperature in your room, conversations you had last week. Go back far enough, and your choice was actually determined by the exact position of every atom in the universe at the moment of the Big Bang. You're not making decisions, you're just a biological machine playing out a program that was written 13.8 billion years ago. Right now, your brain is probably rebelling against this idea. Of course I have free will. I could stop watching this video right now if I wanted to, but could you really? Or is your brain just following its programming, which includes the program to believe it has free will? Even your resistance to this concept, the thoughts you're having right now, the urge to disagree, all of it was predetermined. You're not choosing to think these thoughts, you're watching them happen. Like a passenger in a car that's driving itself. Welcome to the most terrifying realization in philosophy. You might just be along for the ride. The absurd. You're lying in bed at 3 a.m., staring at the ceiling, and suddenly a question hits you like a truck. What's the point of any of this? You wake up, go to work, pay bills, watch Netflix, sleep, repeat, for decades, until you die, and then nothing. Your job won't matter. Your relationships won't matter. Even your greatest achievements, SPS, completely meaningless in 100 years. Welcome to what Albert Camus called the absurd. The moment when you realize life has no inherent purpose, but you have to keep living it anyway. Think about it. You spend years getting an education, to get a job, to make money, to buy stuff, to impress people who are also working jobs they don't care about, to buy stuff they don't need. Meanwhile, the universe is 13.8 billion years old, and you'll be dead in maybe 80 years if you're lucky. Your entire existence is a cosmic blip. Less than a blip. A fraction of a blip. But wait, it gets worse. Because even though life is meaningless, you can't stop caring about it. You still get excited about your weekend plans. You still feel heartbroken when relationships end. You still worry about your career, your appearance, what people think of you. You're like someone passionately arguing about the rules of a game that doesn't actually exist. Camus said, "We have three options: commit suicide and escape the absurdity, find religion or philosophy to give us fake meaning, or accept the absurdity and keep living anyway." Most people choose option 2. They convince themselves their job matters, their beliefs are important, their lives have cosmic significance. But deep down, in those 3 a.m. moments, you know the truth. You're trapped in a meaningless universe, forced to create your own purpose, knowing it's all just elaborate self-deception to avoid facing the void. And, somehow, you have to be okay with that. False memory syndrome. Remember your first day of school? 10 nervous. Mom waving goodbye. That specific classroom smell? Half of that memory is fake. False memory syndrome shows your brain constantly rewrites your past. Every time you remember something, you're not accessing a file, you're rebuilding it from scratch, filling gaps with pure fiction. Studies prove people vividly remember entire childhood events that never happened. Detailed, emotional memories. Completely fabricated. Right now, think of your most treasured memory. How much actually happened that way? Your brain edited out boring parts, enhanced drama, added details from movies or stories you heard. Your personality is built on these fake memories. You think you're brave because you remember standing up to a bully, but maybe that never happened. You avoid situations because you remember being embarrassed, but perhaps that embarrassment is fiction. Look at old photos from events you remember clearly. Notice how different reality looks from your memory. Every confident statement about your past might, "I've always been this way," or "I learned not to trust people when," might be based on memories that exist only in your head. Your entire identity could be built on stories your brain invented and convinced you are real. Sardian nihilism. Imagine someone asks why torture is wrong. Your immediate response, because it causes suffering. Connect 10. But why is suffering bad? Sadian nihilism, named after the Marquis de Sade, asks a question that makes most people's skin crawl. If nothing ultimately matters, why shouldn't we cause pain? Traditional morality says suffering is bad because, well, just because. But strip away religious rules and social conditioning, what's actually wrong with cruelty? Animals torture their prey. Nature is filled with violence. The universe doesn't care if you're in agony. So why do we pretend pain has some cosmic significance? Sade argued that if life is meaningless, and deep down you know it is, then your squeamishness about cruelty is just social programming, pure emotional conditioning with no logical foundation. Right now your brain is screaming, "That's horrible." But why? Because you were taught to think that way. Because society needs you to believe suffering matters so civilization doesn't collapse. But what if, just what if, your moral outrage is nothing more than trained behavior, like a dog that's been taught not to bite? The truly disturbing part isn't that some people embrace cruelty. It's that your rejection of cruelty might be just as arbitrary and meaningless as embracing it. In a universe without inherent purpose, good and evil become nothing more than personal preferences. And deep down, when you're honest with yourself, you know there's no cosmic referee keeping score. Cosmic pessimism. Stars explode, black holes devour galaxies, entire civilizations get wiped out by asteroid impacts. And somehow, you think the universe cares about your feelings. Cosmic pessimism reveals the most uncomfortable truth about existence. Reality is fundamentally hostile to consciousness. Every moment you're alive, the universe is actively trying to kill you. Radiation from space, NU-19, constantly bombarding your cells. Gravity, NU-19, slowly crushing your spine. Time, aging your body toward inevitable death. Even the air you breathe creates toxic waste that damages your organs. But wait, it gets darker. Consciousness itself might be the universe's cruelest joke. Most matter in the cosmos is unconscious rock and gas, floating peacefully through the void. No suffering, no anxiety, no existential dread. Then, somehow, you happened. A tiny spark of awareness in an ocean of mindless matter, just conscious enough to realize how hostile everything around you island. Look at natural disasters. Earthquakes don't avoid hospitals. Tsunamis don't spare orphanages. Cancer doesn't care if you're a good person. The universe operates with complete indifference to your well-being or anyone's well-being. Every happy moment in human history happened despite the universe's best efforts to end it. Your ancestors survived ice ages, plagues, predators, and cosmic catastrophes, NXLV. Not because reality was kind to them, but because they got ridiculously lucky. Right now, a gamma ray burst could sterilize Earth without warning, and the universe wouldn't even notice. Welcome to the most liberating and terrifying realization. Nothing personal is happening to you. Reality just hates everything equally. Herd mentality. Walking through a busy intersection, everyone suddenly stops and looks up at the sky. What do? Look up, of course, without even thinking about it. Herd mentality reveals something embarrassing about human nature. Individual thinking is mostly an illusion. Most of your opinions, behaviors, and choices are just copying what everyone else does. Notice how your music taste mysteriously aligns with whatever's popular, how your political views happen to match your friend group, how you suddenly want things right after seeing others have them. Animals do this too. When one sheep runs, they all run, even if there's no actual danger. But at least sheep don't pretend they're making independent decisions. Watch yourself in any group setting. You automatically mirror their energy, adopt their speaking patterns, laugh when they laugh. Your brain is constantly scanning the room asking, "What's everyone else doing?" Then, adjusting your behavior to match. Even your rebellion against the crowd? Still herd behavior, IT5, just following a different herd. Social media makes this worse. Viral trends, cancel culture, mass outrage, to millions of people thinking they're expressing individual opinions, while saying the exact same things as everyone else. The most disturbing part, right now, most of your core beliefs about yourself, your values, your goals probably came from whatever group you happen to fall into. Strip away social influence, and what's actually left of you? Banality of evil. Someone at work starts spreading gossip about a co-worker. Nasty, personal stuff. What do? Most people don't join in. But they don't stop it either. They just listen, nod, maybe even laugh uncomfortably. Hannah Arendt called this the banality of evil. How ordinary people participate in terrible things not because they're monsters, but because they're thoughtless. Adolf Eichmann, who organized Holocaust deportations, wasn't a raging psychopath. He was a boring bureaucrat who followed orders, filled out paperwork, and never questioned what he was doing. Sound familiar? Every day, you participate in systems that cause suffering. Buying clothes made by exploited workers, staying silent when someone makes racist jokes, ignoring homeless people on your way to buy coffee. Not because you're evil, because thinking is exhausting. It's easier to follow the crowd, keep your head down, do what everyone else does. Right now, there's probably something happening in your workplace, your friend group, your family, something wrong that everyone knows about but nobody addresses. And you're part of that silence. The scariest part, evil doesn't need passionate villains. It just needs regular people who don't want to make waves. Look around. Most harm in the world isn't caused by monsters. It's caused by people just like you. Good people who choose comfort over courage. Slave morality. Someone cuts in line at the grocery store, confident, unapologetic, taking what they want. Your immediate reaction, what a selfish person. But wait. Why is selfishness automatically bad? Nietzsche's slave morality suggests something disturbing. Your moral system was invented by losers to make winners feel guilty. Originally, good meant powerful, beautiful, successful. Bad meant weak, ugly, unsuccessful. Simple as that. But the weak got clever. They couldn't beat the strong. So they flipped the script. Suddenly, being meek became virtuous. Self-sacrifice became noble. Suffering became holy. Christianity perfected this. Blessed are the poor. The meek shall inherit the earth. It's easier for a camel to go through a needle's eye than for a rich man to enter heaven. Translation: we can't win at life, so let's make losing into winning. Notice how modern morality celebrates weakness. We praise people for being humble, selfless, putting others first. We shame ambition, confidence, and success as greedy or selfish. But deep down, don't you admire people who take what they want, who live boldly without apologizing, who refuse to shrink themselves to make others comfortable? Your moral outrage at selfish behavior might just be resentment disguised as righteousness. The weak convincing themselves, and you, that their inability to compete is actually moral superiority, makes you wonder, are you practicing morality or just organized envy? Eternal recurrence. Picture this. When you die, you instantly wake up as a newborn, living your exact same life again. Every moment, every choice, every mistake, repeated infinitely. Same embarrassing moments, same heartbreaks, same boring Tuesday afternoons, same arguments with your parents, forever. Nietzsche's eternal recurrence asks the ultimate question. If you had to live your life on repeat for eternity, would you be terrified or excited? Most people immediately feel sick thinking about it. Living through high school again? That awkward phase, those cringy texts you sent, that time you tripped in front of everyone. Infinite times? Reliving every petty argument, every wasted weekend, every moment you spent scrolling social media instead of doing something meaningful. The disturbing truth. If the thought of repeating your life horrifies you, what does that say about the life you're living right now? Right now, today, you're making choices you'd regret having to repeat forever. Staying in relationships that drain you, working jobs that bore you, avoiding conversations you need to have. Eternal recurrence isn't about some cosmic punishment. It's about facing how much of your one precious life you're wasting on things that make you miserable. If you had to live today, over and over forever, would you change anything? The answer reveals everything about whether you're truly living or just existing. Moral relativism. A woman in one culture covers her face. It's respectful. In another culture, showing your face is respectful. Both societies think the other is wrong. Who's actually right? Moral relativism says neither. Because right and wrong don't actually exist. They're just cultural opinions dressed up as universal truths. Think about it. Eating cows is normal to you, horrifying to Hindus. Multiple wives seem immoral to you, perfectly acceptable in some societies. Child marriage disgusts you now, but was completely normal for most of human history. Even murder, number son, supposedly the ultimate wrong, has exceptions everywhere. War, self-defense, capital punishment. Your own government kills people and calls it justice. So where are these absolute moral rules supposed to come from? God? Which God? Nature. Nature is filled with violence and suffering. Reason? Smart people disagree about everything. Every moral belief you hold. Someone somewhere thinks you're evil for believing it. And they're just as convinced they're right as you are. Right now, future generations will probably look back at things you consider normal: wealth, factory farming, wealth inequality, social media addiction, CTAA, and think you were monsters. The uncomfortable truth? Your moral compass isn't pointing to some cosmic north. It's just pointing to whatever your culture programmed into you. And deep down, when you're honest, you know it. Hedonic treadmill. Remember getting that thing you desperately wanted? Maybe new headphones, a promotion, or your dream car. For exactly 2 weeks, you were happy. Then it became normal. Background noise. Just another thing you owned that didn't make you feel special anymore. Welcome to the hedonic treadmill. 1905. The psychological trap that ensures you never stay satisfied, no matter what you achieve. Your brain has a happiness set point. Get something amazing. Temporary spike in joy, then back to baseline. Lose something important. Temporary dip in mood, then back to baseline. Lottery winners aren't significantly happier, than anyone else after the first year. People who lose limbs adapt and return to similar happiness levels. Your emotional baseline is basically bulletproof. But nobody tells you this when you're working 60-hour weeks to afford that apartment, or stressing about getting into the right college, or saving for months to buy something you think will change your life. Social media makes this worse. Everyone's showcasing their temporary happiness spikes while you're stuck at your baseline, wondering why you're not as fulfilled as they seem. The disturbing realization: most of your life goals are just elaborate ways to feel the same way you already feel. You're running on a treadmill, convinced you're making progress, while staying in exactly the same place emotionally. Original sin. A newborn baby opens its eyes for the first time, innocent, pure, untouched by the world's corruption. Except, according to original sin, that baby is already broken. Christianity teaches we're all born guilty of Adam's crime. But strip away the religious language and something darker emerges. Humans are fundamentally flawed from birth. Look at children when adults aren't watching. They lie effortlessly, steal cookies, hit other kids, pull wings off insects. Nobody teaches them this behavior. It just emerges naturally. Most parents spend decades trying to civilize their children, teaching them not to be selfish, cruel, dishonest, as if goodness is learned and badness is default. Even secular psychology agrees. Babies are born completely self-centered, unable to empathize, caring only about their own needs. Socialization is just training animals to pretend they're civilized. Watch yourself when nobody's looking. When you're tired, stressed, or anonymous online, what comes out naturally? Kindness or cruelty, generosity or selfishness, truth or convenient lies. Strip away years of social conditioning, moral education, and fear of consequences. What's left might be closer to your actual nature. Original sin isn't about some ancient fruit. It's about recognizing something most people spend their lives denying. Maybe you're not naturally good. Thanatos. Late at night, driving alone on an empty highway. Suddenly, you imagine jerking the steering wheel hard right. Just for a split second. Why did your brain go there? Freud called it Thanatos, itan, the death drive. Hidden beneath your survival instincts lives something darker, a pull toward destruction, chaos, ending. Ever stand at a cliff edge and feel a weird urge to jump? Not because you're suicidal, but because some part of your mind is curious about the fall. Or find yourself drawn to horror movies, true crime podcasts, disaster footage. Why do people slow down to stare at car accidents? Thanatos isn't just about literal death. It's about the urge to destroy what you've built. Sabotage good relationships, quit stable jobs, start fights you can't win. Notice how you sometimes make choices that hurt your future self. Procrastinate on important projects. Say things you know you'll regret. Stay up too late when you have early meetings. Part of you actively works against your own interests, seeking chaos when life gets too comfortable, conflict when things get too peaceful, even cutting your own hair at 2 a.m. or sending risky texts. That's Thanatos whispering, "Let's see what happens if we burn it all down." Your death drive doesn't want you dead. It wants to feel alive through destruction. The shadow. Your friend starts dating someone new, and you immediately find reasons to dislike them. Too loud, too clingy, too fake. But wait, aren't those the exact things people say about you behind your back? Carl Jung discovered something unsettling called the shadow. All the parts of yourself you refuse to acknowledge get projected onto other people. Whatever annoys you most about others, that's probably your shadow speaking. The coworker you think is attention-seeking. You secretly crave attention too. The person you call manipulative. Check your own behavior patterns. Every quality you judge harshly in others exists somewhere in your unconscious mind. Your brain just hides it from you and points the finger outward instead. Notice how you always seem to attract the same type of problematic person, same toxic friend patterns, same difficult romantic partners. Jung would say, you're not attracting them. You're recognizing your own hidden darkness in them. The most righteous, judgmental people often have the biggest shadows. They spend so much energy condemning others because they can't face their own capacity for the same behaviors. Right now, think of someone who really irritates you. What specific traits bother you about them? That's your shadow waving hello. The disturbing truth. You are everything you hate in other people. You're just better at hiding it from yourself. Genetic determinism. Two identical twins separated at birth. Raised in completely different families, different countries, different cultures. 20 years later, they meet for the first time. Same laugh, same nervous habits, same taste in music, same career choice. Genetic determinism says something most people desperately want to deny. DNA is your destiny. Studies of separated twins are terrifying. They choose similar names for their children, marry people with similar characteristics, even have the same favorite colors, without ever meeting. Intelligence, personality, mental health, addiction tendencies, political beliefs, all significantly influenced by genes you didn't choose. Right now, your sense of humor, largely genetic, your anxiety levels, written in your DNA, your ability to delay gratification, inherited from parents you might barely know. Even your deepest values and moral beliefs correlate with specific gene variants. Conservatives and liberals literally have different genetic markers for disgust, sensitivity, and threat detection. Your life choices feel personal and meaningful, but you're essentially a biological program executing code written millions of years ago. Free will becomes even more questionable when your preferences, talents, and limitations were determined before you were born. Look at your parents, your siblings. Notice the patterns you can't escape. The personality traits you swore you'd never have but somehow developed anyway. Your genes don't just influence you. They are you. Solipsism. Ever had a conversation where someone's response seemed scripted? Like they weren't really thinking, just playing their expected role. What if they actually weren't thinking at all? Solipsism asks the ultimate paranoid question. ITR. What if you're the only conscious person in existence and everyone else is just an elaborate illusion? Right now, you're experiencing thoughts, feelings, consciousness. But when you look at other people, you're just assuming they have inner lives too. You've never actually experienced someone else's consciousness. Maybe your friends are just biological robots programmed to act human. Maybe their laughter is automatic responses, their tears just chemical reactions without real emotion behind them. When someone says, "I understand how you feel," do they? Or are they just saying words their programming tells them to say? Notice how predictable most people are. Same reactions to the same situations, same opinions within their social groups, same emotional patterns, almost like they're running on software instead of genuine consciousness. Even worse, maybe this entire reality is just your mind, creating an elaborate simulation. Other people, places, this video, all projections of your consciousness talking to itself. Deep down, you already feel completely alone in your head, maybe because you actually are. And everyone reading these words right now might just be extensions of one mind. Yours. Dysteleological suffering. A child gets cancer at age 7. D's in pain, terrified, never understanding why. Where's the lesson in that? What purpose did it serve? How did it make anyone stronger? Dysteleological suffering destroys our need for meaning. It's the reality that most pain is completely pointless. People desperately search for silver linings. Everything happens for a reason. God has a plan. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Whoa. But sometimes, a drunk driver just hits a family. A hurricane destroys a town. Someone develops dementia and forgets everyone they love. No cosmic purpose, no character building, no greater good, just random, meaningless agony. Watch how uncomfortable people get when you can't find meaning in tragedy. They'll twist themselves into knots trying to explain why terrible things needed to happen. Natural disasters kill millions. Genetic diseases torture innocent children. Mental illness destroys brilliant minds. And the universe doesn't care, doesn't learn anything, doesn't become better because of it. Your own worst moments, the times you suffered most, strip away all the meaning you've invented afterward. Was there actually any point to that pain? Or was it just suffering? Random, purposeless, dysteleological suffering that you've spent years trying to convince yourself meant something. Maybe it didn't mean anything at all. Panopticon society. Walking through the mall, cameras track your every move. Your phone logs your location. Your credit card records what you buy. Your browser saves what you search. But somehow, you still pick your nose when you think nobody's watching. Jeremy Bentham designed the Panopticon, EIF, a prison where guards could watch every prisoner, but prisoners never knew when they were being observed. Perfect control through uncertainty. Welcome to your life. Amazon knows what you want before you do. Google predicts your searches. Social media algorithms know your political views better than your family does. Surveillance cameras recognize your face in crowds. Yet people still speed when they don't see cops. Still lie on dating profiles. Still steal office supplies. The disturbing part isn't that you're being watched. It's how inconsistently you care about being watched. Privacy disappeared gradually, so you barely noticed. First cookies, then location tracking, then microphones listening for keywords, then cameras recognizing emotions. Each step felt reasonable in isolation, convenient, helpful even. Now corporations know your menstrual cycle, governments track your movements, and AI systems predict your behavior. But you still post everything online voluntarily. You're simultaneously the prisoner and the guard in your own panopticon, surveilling yourself more thoroughly than any dictator ever could. And somehow, you paid for the privilege. Death of God. Christmas morning, families gathering around trees, exchanging gifts, pretending to celebrate the birth of someone they don't really believe in anymore. Churches emptying, prayer feeling awkward, religious rules seem arbitrary. Nietzsche declared, God is dead, over a century ago. But most people are still pretending otherwise. Walk through any modern city. Science explains what we used to call miracles. Psychology explains what we used to call the soul. Evolution explains what we used to call divine creation. Yet people still say thoughts and prayers after tragedies, while secretly knowing those prayers go nowhere. Weddings happen in churches by people who haven't been to service in years. Funerals invoke heaven by families who don't actually believe in the afterlife. Even religious people live like atheists Monday through Saturday. They plan for retirement instead of trusting God's provision. They get medical treatment instead of relying on faith healing. They lock their doors instead of believing in divine protection. The disturbing truth? Most people already live as if God doesn't exist. They just haven't admitted it to themselves yet. Modern life killed the need for divine explanation. But instead of accepting the void, society maintains empty rituals and hollow traditions. God died. But nobody wants to attend the funeral. Übermensch. Meeting someone truly exceptional. Someone who seems to operate by completely different rules than everyone else. They don't ask permission, don't follow trends, don't care about normal social expectations. Part of you is annoyed, but part of you is secretly envious. Nietzsche's Übermensch, für man, represents humans who've evolved beyond ordinary morality and social conditioning. They create their own values instead of inheriting them. Most people are sheep following inherited rules they never questioned. Don't steal, be humble, follow authority, care what others think. But what if those rules are just suggestions? Look at history's most influential people, artists, entrepreneurs, and revolutionaries. They broke rules, everyone else followed. Steve Jobs was notoriously difficult. Picasso ignored artistic conventions. Einstein challenged scientific orthodoxy. Deep down, don't you believe you're capable of more than the people around you, that you see things others miss, that normal rules don't quite apply to your unique situation? When you bend rules, cut in line because you're special, take credit you didn't earn, manipulate situations to your advantage, part of you thinks, I'm different, I deserve this. Maybe you're not just being selfish. Maybe you're becoming Übermensch. The disturbing question, what if some people actually are superior to others? And what if you're one of them? Nihilistic void. Midnight scrolling through social media. Watching people post about their amazing lives, their meaningful careers, their deep relationships. But underneath all those smiling photos, do you sense it? That hollow feeling that none of it actually matters. Welcome to the nihilistic void, Nihen, the emptiness hiding beneath everything humans do to feel important. People build careers they don't care about, create families to avoid loneliness, pursue hobbies to fill time, post constantly to prove they exist. All desperate attempts to cover up the same terrifying realization. There's nothing at the center, no cosmic purpose driving your choices, no deeper meaning behind your relationships, no grand plan connecting your experiences. Just void. Strip away all the distractions, your goals, your beliefs, your daily routines, and what's left? A consciousness floating in space, creating elaborate stories to avoid facing the emptiness. Even this video, your philosophical curiosity, your search for disturbing truths, might just be another distraction from confronting the void directly. Religion tried to fill it with God. Science tried to fill it with progress. Psychology tried to fill it with self-improvement. But the void remains. Ready for the most disturbing part? Deep down, in your quietest moments, you can feel it. That hollow space where meaning should be, and you know it's real. Materialist, reductionism, staring into someone's eyes during an intimate conversation, feeling that spark of connection, that sense of truly seeing another soul. But what if there's no soul to see? Materialist reductionism says everything you think makes you human. Love, creativity, consciousness, spiritual experiences is just chemistry. When you feel overwhelming love for someone, that's dopamine and oxytocin flooding your synapses. When you have a profound spiritual moment, that's neurons firing in your temporal lobe. When you create art that moves people, that's just pattern recognition software in your brain. Depression isn't a dark night of the soul. It's low serotonin. Personality isn't your unique essence. It's genetic variations in neurotransmitter production. Even your sense of free will choosing what to say right now. That's just electrical impulses following predetermined pathways. Your most meaningful memories? Chemical traces in neural networks. Your deepest beliefs about reality? Evolutionary programming designed to help your genes survive. Strip away the romantic language, and you're essentially a biological computer made of meat, running software you didn't write, toward goals you didn't choose. Every transcendent human experience can be replicated with the right drugs or brain stimulation. Love becomes neurochemistry, art becomes pattern processing, God becomes temporal lobe epilepsy. Nothing more than sophisticated chemistry, pretending to be profound. Bad faith. Sitting in a job you hate, complaining to friends, "I have no choice, I need the money." But wait, didn't you just make a choice? You chose money over happiness, security over risk, comfort over authentic living. Jean-Paul Sartre called this bad faith, lying to yourself about your own freedom to avoid the anxiety of choosing. I can't leave my toxic relationship. We have kids together. I can't pursue my dreams. I'm too old now. I can't speak up at work. I might get fired. Every can't is actually a won't. Every excuse is a choice, disguised as inevitability. Bad faith feels safer than freedom because responsibility is terrifying. If you admit you're choosing your miserable life, then you have to do something about it. Much easier to pretend you're trapped. Watch how people describe their lives: to have to work late again, instead of "I'm choosing work over family time." My anxiety won't let me, instead of "I'm avoiding something that scares me." Even bigger lies: "I'm just not the type of person who." People like me don't. I was raised to. Right now, every aspect of your life you blame on circumstances, other people, or your past is actually a choice you're making and refusing to own. Bad faith isn't just lying to others about your freedom. It's lying to yourself. Terror management, buying expensive clothes, posting perfect photos online, working overtime for a promotion you don't really want. Why do any of it? Terror management theory suggests every human behavior stems from one source: absolute terror of dying. Ernest Becker argued that consciousness is humanity's curse. Animals don't know they'll die, so they live without existential dread. But humans? We're aware enough to understand our mortality, yet too attached to life to accept it. So we create immortality projects, desperate attempts to outlive death through symbolic meaning. Building a career isn't about money. It's about leaving a legacy. Having children isn't just biological. It's about genetic immortality, creating art, accumulating wealth, even getting famous on social media, all ways of pretending you'll somehow survive death. Religion promises literal immortality. Nationalism offers belonging to something eternal. Even your morning coffee routine creates the illusion that life will continue predictably forever. Watch how people react to reminders of mortality. After 9/11, church attendance spiked. During COVID, people hoarded supplies and clung to routines. Strip away the immortality projects, and what drives you? The same thing that drives everyone. Pure, animal terror of non-existence. Every goal, every relationship, every achievement. Just elaborate ways of not thinking about dying. Social Darwinism. Job interview. Two equally qualified candidates sitting in the waiting room. One gets hired, the other doesn't. Society says, "May the best person win." But what if the best person is just whoever's willing to be most ruthless? Social Darwinism applies survival of the fittest to human society. Rich people deserve wealth because they're naturally superior. Poor people deserve poverty because they're naturally inferior. Sounds harsh until you examine your own beliefs. When someone succeeds, don't you assume they worked harder, made better choices, had superior skills? When someone fails, don't you secretly think they must have done something wrong? Every time you judge homeless people as lazy or admire billionaires as brilliant, you're practicing social Darwinism, competition for college admissions, job promotions, dating, all based on the idea that some humans are simply better than others. Winners deserve to win, losers deserve to lose. Even charity feels condescending. The fit helping the unfit out of pity rather than recognizing equal human worth. Look around. Society is already organized like this. Better genetics, better upbringing, better connections. Some people start ahead, and society calls their advantages merit. The disturbing truth: deep down, you probably believe some people matter more than others, and secretly hope you're one of the ones who matters. Moral nihilism. Standing at a crosswalk. A red light. No cars coming, nobody watching. Do you wait or cross? Most people cross. And in that moment, they prove moral rules are just suggestions. Moral nihilism argues that nothing is actually right or wrong. Murder, kindness, helping strangers, torturing innocents, all equally meaningless from the universe's perspective. But causing pain is obviously wrong. Why? Because it feels bad. Lots of things feel bad that aren't immoral. Exercise, studying, dental work. Because society says so. Society once said slavery was moral. Different societies have opposite moral codes. Which one's correct? Because God commands it. Which God? They all contradict each other. Strip away emotions, social conditioning, and religious programming, and what's left? Personal preferences dressed up as cosmic laws. Right now, your moral outrage at certain behaviors, that's just brain chemistry, evolved to help groups cooperate. Your disgust at cruelty, just an emotional reaction, with no objective foundation. Even your desire to be good stems from self-interest. Avoiding guilt, gaining approval, feeling superior to bad people. Watch how quickly moral rules bend when convenient. Speed limits, tax laws, little white lies. Everyone's a part-time nihilist when nobody's looking. The disturbing truth? Deep down, you already live like moral nihilism is true. Parasitic existence. Birthday party. Everyone singing, celebrating, bringing gifts. But behind the smiles, notice something unsettling. Most relationships are just elaborate resource extraction. Parasitic existence suggests humans rarely offer equal value in their connections. Someone's always taking more than they give, and you're probably both parasite and host. Friends who only call when they need favors. Family members who drain your energy without reciprocating. Romantic partners who consume your time, money, emotional labor, while contributing significantly less. Even worse, you do it too. Think about your closest relationships. What do you actually provide versus what you receive? When you text someone, aren't you usually seeking attention, validation, entertainment, or assistance? Your social media posts, your conversations, your very presence, often just ways of extracting something from others. Likes, sympathy, admiration, free therapy. Babies are obvious parasites, completely dependent, offering nothing but cuteness in return. But adults? Just better at disguising their parasitism as friendship, love, or family obligation. Even helping others often serves your need to feel valuable, needed, morally superior. Watch any group dynamic. There's always someone who talks more than they listen, takes more than they give, needs more than they provide. The uncomfortable question: in your relationships, are you the parasite or just a really good host? Might makes right. Getting cut off in traffic by someone in a luxury car, and somehow you don't honk at them the way you would at someone driving a beat-up sedan. Why the different reaction? Might makes right suggests that power, not morality, actually determines what's acceptable. People with more strength, wealth, or influence get to break rules that others can't. Watch how differently society treats identical behaviors based on who performs them. When a homeless person takes something, it's theft. When a corporation takes something, it's business strategy. Rich people avoid taxes through loopholes. Poor people who don't pay are criminals. Politicians lie and call it political messaging. Regular people lie and face consequences. Even in personal relationships, the person with more options, more confidence, more resources, usually gets their way. Not because they're right, but because they can. Notice your own behavior around power. You probably speak differently to your boss than to your subordinates. Treat attractive people better than unattractive ones. Show more respect to successful people than struggling ones. Deep down, you already live as if might makes right. You just pretend morality matters when convenient. History's written by winners. Laws are made by the powerful. Justice goes to whoever can afford better lawyers. Power doesn't corrupt. It reveals what was always true. Divine command theory. Watching the news. Another scandal involving religious leaders behaving badly, lying, stealing, hurting people they're supposed to protect. Yet, somehow, believers still defend the institution. Well, God works through imperfect people. Divine command theory reveals something disturbing about moral thinking. Many people believe right and wrong exist only because God says so. Murder is wrong because God forbids it. Helping others is good because God commands it. Strip away divine authority, and morality becomes meaningless opinion. Religious people hate admitting this, but their logic leads to terrifying conclusions. If God commanded torture tomorrow, would it become moral? If divine law changed, would your deepest moral convictions flip instantly? Even scarier, non-religious people often think the same way about other authorities. Laws are right because government makes them. Social norms are correct because society endorses them. Both groups desperately need someone else to tell them what's moral, because facing moral responsibility alone is terrifying. Notice how uncomfortable people get when asked, "Why is this wrong?" without appealing to some external authority. Religion, law, culture, experts, always someone else making the rules. Deep down, most people don't want to be morally autonomous. They want to follow orders, then blame the authority figure when things go wrong. Free moral choice is too heavy a burden. Brain in vat. Through virtual reality headsets, you escape into artificial worlds. But what if you never escaped back? Brain in vat theory suggests everything you experience could be electrical signals fed to your harvested brain, floating in laboratory fluid. Your memories, relationships, sensations, all perfectly simulated by scientists you'll never meet. Right now, you feel certain this is reality. But a brain in vat would feel identical certainty about their fake world. Every test you'd try, pinching yourself, asking others for confirmation, would be perfectly replicated in simulation. Pain, love, fear. Just electrical patterns that could be artificially induced. If this is all simulation, when did it start? Are you living someone else's life? Are you even you? The disturbing truth? You could never tell the difference, and might never be meant to discover it. Existential nausea. Grocery store checkout line. Mindlessly scanning items, going through motions, when suddenly everything feels wrong. Not sick wrong, existentially wrong. Jean-Paul Sartre called this existential nausea, the overwhelming disgust that hits when you suddenly see reality without comforting illusions. Standing there, with your cart full of stuff you don't really need, surrounded by people playing roles they never chose, following routines that serve no ultimate purpose, and for one horrifying moment, the absurdity becomes visible. Why are you buying groceries? To stay alive. Why stay alive? To buy more groceries. Everything feels hollow. Your job, your relationships, your goals, all just elaborate ways to avoid confronting the void. People walking around pretending their activities matter, while the universe spins indifferently through space. Existential nausea isn't depression, it's clarity. Seeing through the social constructs and personal delusions that usually make life bearable. Most people feel this occasionally, usually at 3 a.m., in empty parking lots, during routine activities that suddenly seem pointless. Then they quickly distract themselves back into comfortable numbness. But some philosophers argue this nausea is the most honest human experience. The moment when you see existence as it really island, raw, meaningless, absurd, and inescapable. Evolutionary debunking. You're watching a sunset and you feel overwhelmed by its beauty, convinced you're witnessing something objectively magnificent about the universe. But what if that feeling is just ancient software lying to you? Evolutionary debunking suggests your deepest convictions about truth, beauty, and morality are just survival mechanisms disguised as insights. Your sense that murder is wrong. Evolution programmed cooperative instincts because groups that didn't kill each other survived better. Your attraction to symmetrical faces. Genetic health indicators helped ancestors choose good mates. Even your love of nature, art, music, all potentially just brain circuits that once helped humans survive, now misfiring in modern environments. Your moral outrage at injustice, tribal loyalty software, your sense of meaning and purpose, death anxiety management, your aesthetic preferences, environmental cues that once indicated safety or resources. Scientists can now predict your political beliefs by measuring your disgust sensitivity. Your personality traits correlate with specific genetic variants. Your deepest philosophical intuitions might be as programmed as a bird's migration patterns. Strip away evolutionary programming, and what's left of your authentic self? Every conviction you hold most sacred, every belief you die defending, every value you consider obviously true, potentially just biological accidents that helped your ancestors reproduce. Your mind isn't discovering truth. It's executing code written by natural selection, compulsion to repeat. You break up with someone who treats you badly, promising yourself, never again. 6 months later, you're dating someone with the exact same toxic patterns. Freud discovered something unsettling called compulsion to repeat. Humans are magnetically drawn to recreate their worst experiences over and over. Abusive childhoods create adults who seek abusive relationships. People who grew up poor often sabotage financial success. Those raised by alcoholics frequently become addicts themselves, not because they enjoy suffering, because familiar pain feels safer than unknown joy. Watch your own patterns. Same types of friendships that drain you. Same work situations that stress you out. Same self-destructive habits you swore you'd quit. Even positive changes feel wrong when you're programmed for chaos. Healthy relationships feel boring. Financial stability creates anxiety. Success triggers self-sabotage. Your unconscious mind would rather repeat known trauma than risk unknown happiness. Notice how you keep having the same arguments with different people. Keep finding yourself in similar disappointing situations. Keep making choices that lead to familiar frustrations. It's not bad luck or coincidence. It's compulsion to repeat. Your brain is literally addicted to recreating your earliest emotional experiences, even when they were terrible. Breaking the cycle requires recognizing you're not choosing these patterns, you're being chosen by them. Noble lie. Watching politicians on TV making campaign promises, knowing they're lying, yet somehow hoping they'll follow through anyway. Deep down, don't you kind of want them to lie? Plato's noble lie suggests that society needs certain deceptions to function. Some truths are too devastating for regular people to handle. So leaders should lie to maintain order. Think about it. Parents lie to children about death, violence, adult problems. Everything will be okay when it won't. Santa brings presents to teach generosity. Good things happen to good people to encourage moral behavior. Even as adults, you probably prefer comfortable lies. Doctors who say, "You'll be fine," instead of discussing mortality statistics. Friends who say, "You look great," when you clearly don't. Society that pretends hard work guarantees success. Politicians lie about economic recovery, military victories, national security, and voters often reward the best liars rather than the most honest candidates. Notice how angry people get at whistleblowers who reveal uncomfortable truths. Edward Snowden exposed government surveillance, and many called him a traitor for telling the truth. Maybe ignorance really is bliss. Maybe some lies protect social stability. Maybe the masses can't handle reality without falling into chaos or despair. The disturbing question: do you want to be told the truth? Or do you secretly prefer leaders who lie to you skillfully? Moral luck. 2. Equally drunk drivers leave the same bar. Same level of intoxication. Same reckless decision to drive home. One makes it safely. The other kills a child who runs into the street. Same choice. Same moral culpability, but completely different consequences based on pure chance. Moral luck reveals something unsettling about justice. Your moral responsibility often depends on factors you can't control. The driver who killed someone becomes a monster in society's eyes. The one who made it home? Just someone who got away with a bad decision, but their moral failing was identical. This happens constantly. CEOs make risky decisions. Some get lucky and become visionaries. Others crash companies and become villains. Students cheat on exams. Some get caught and face consequences. Others graduate with honors. Even your character traits. Being born with impulse control, growing up in stable environments, having good role models. None of that was your choice. People in prison often made the same mistakes as people walking free. They just had worse luck, fewer resources, or got caught. The disturbing truth: much of what society calls good or evil is really just lucky or unlucky. Your moral reputation might depend less on your choices and more on circumstances completely beyond your control. Justice becomes arbitrary when luck determines consequences. Being toward death, you scroll through social media, seeing vacation photos, career updates, weekend plans. Everyone living like they have unlimited time. But what if constantly remembering death was actually the key to authentic living? Heidegger's Being Toward Death argues that most people live in denial of their mortality, and this denial makes their lives meaningless. Daily routines, long-term goals, retirement planning, all ways of pretending you're permanent when you're not. Society encourages this delusion because death-aware people are harder to control, but confronting mortality changes everything. Petty concerns vanish. Fake relationships become obvious. Time stops feeling infinite. Ever notice how people facing terminal illness suddenly become more authentic? They quit jobs they hate, end toxic relationships, speak uncomfortable truths. Death awareness clarifies what actually matters. Most people avoid funerals, don't discuss aging, refuse to write wills, desperately maintaining the illusion of permanence. But what if embracing your finite existence, your being toward death, was the only way to live genuinely? Right now, you have maybe 30,000 days left. How many are you wasting on things that don't matter? Death isn't life's enemy. It's life's meaning maker. Without mortality, nothing would have urgency, weight, or significance. Cultural relativism. Restaurant menu. Authentic ethnic cuisine, prepared by someone who's never been to that country. But somehow it tastes exactly like what customers expect. Cultural relativism suggests that truth, morality, even reality itself, changes depending on which society you're born into. Female genital mutilation is horrific to Western minds, but sacred tradition in some cultures. Arranged marriage seems oppressive to individualistic societies, but loving family guidance to collectivist ones. Even basic concepts like fairness or success mean completely different things across cultures. Right now, your deepest moral convictions, someone somewhere considers obviously wrong. Your lifestyle choices, others view as immoral or insane. Americans value individual freedom above community harmony. Japanese prioritize group stability over personal expression. Neither is objectively correct. Even your sense of time, personal space, appropriate emotions, all culturally programmed. The disturbing realization? There's no universal human nature, no objective moral standards, no correct way to live. What feels natural and right to you is just cultural conditioning you absorbed without realizing. Strip away your cultural programming, and you might discover there's no real you underneath. Just arbitrary beliefs you inherited from the society that raised you. Death drive, video game loading screen, and for a split second, you hope it crashes so you don't have to play. Work alarm goes off, and part of you wishes you'd just sleep forever instead of facing another day. Freud's death drive suggests humans have an unconscious urge toward destruction, dissolution, ending. Not suicidal thoughts exactly, more like exhaustion, with the effort of existing. The constant work of maintaining relationships, careers, responsibilities. Ever feel drawn to self-sabotage? Picking fights when things go too well? Procrastinating on important projects? Staying up late when you need sleep? That's death drive. Your psyche seeking release from the burden of consciousness. Watch people in boring meetings zone out completely. Notice how relief feels when plans get cancelled. See how vacation days are often spent doing absolutely nothing. Part of you craves the peace of non-existence. Not death necessarily, but the absence of pressure, choice, awareness. Even cutting your hair dramatically or deleting social media accounts. Small deaths, Small endings. Your unconscious mind is tired of being you and occasionally votes for dissolution. The most disturbing realization: sometimes the urge toward ending feels more authentic than the drive to keep going. Ego. Death. There is a mirror in a public bathroom. For a split second, you don't recognize the person staring back, not physically, but something deeper, like you're looking at a stranger wearing your face. Ego death isn't about dying. It's about the temporary dissolution of your sense of self. That constructed identity you carry around suddenly vanishes. Meditation masters describe it. Psychedelic users experience it. Even extreme exhaustion can trigger it. When you're so depleted that you temporarily disappears. Without ego, there's no internal narrator judging everything, no constant self-analysis, no anxiety about how others perceive you, just awareness without the I experiencing it. People who've experienced ego dissolution often report profound peace because the thing that usually causes suffering, your sense of being separate from everything else, temporarily stops existing. But it's terrifying too. Your entire reality is built around being you. So when that dissolves, what remains? Maybe just consciousness itself, without the prison of individual identity. The disturbing question: if you can exist without your ego, then what exactly is your ego? And why do you cling to it so desperately? Experience machine. So you have a perfect virtual reality chamber, offering any life you want. Fame, love, adventure, accomplishment, all designed specifically for maximum happiness. But none of it would be real. Robert Nozick's experience machine poses the ultimate question: would you plug in permanently if it guaranteed perfect contentment? Most people immediately say no, but their actions suggest otherwise. Social media creates artificial relationships. Dating apps manufacture romantic connections. Video games provide achievement without accomplishment. Streaming services deliver emotional experiences without real stakes. People already choose comforting illusions over harsh realities daily. Fantasy over fact. Filtered photos over honest self-image. What's the meaningful difference between virtual happiness and real happiness if you can't tell them apart while experiencing them? Inside the machine, you'd feel genuine love, authentic success, real friendships. Your brain wouldn't know the difference. Outside the machine, you struggle, fail, face rejection, experience loss. The disturbing part isn't that you might choose the machine. It's that you're probably already living in one. Work, relationships, goals could be elaborate simulations your mind creates to avoid confronting reality's emptiness. How would you ever know? False consciousness. When shopping for groceries with a cart full of brand name products, you feel like you're making free choices about what to buy. But advertising executives already decided what you'd choose months ago. Marx's false consciousness reveals how people unknowingly adopt beliefs that serve the powerful while thinking they arrived at these ideas independently. Workers vote against unions while complaining about low wages. Consumers demand choice between nearly identical products. Students go into debt for degrees that mainly benefit loan companies. People celebrate billionaires as job creators, while working multiple jobs to afford rent. They blame immigrants for economic problems, instead of questioning wealth concentration. Even your personal preferences, political views shaped by media algorithms, lifestyle goals influenced by marketing campaigns, relationship expectations programmed by entertainment. Notice how readily people defend systems that exploit them. That's just how business works. Or, anyone can make it if they try hard enough. False consciousness isn't stupidity. It's sophisticated psychological conditioning that makes oppression feel like freedom. Right now, beliefs you consider obviously true might serve someone else's interests while harming your own. The most effective control happens when people police themselves, thinking they're expressing individual choice. Attachment disorder. A friend calls crying about their breakup, and your first thought isn't sympathy, but annoyance that they're interrupting your evening. Then you immediately feel guilty for being so cold. Attachment disorder suggests many people can't form genuine emotional connections. They just simulate them to get their needs met. Ever notice how quickly you lose interest in people once they stop being useful? How relationships feel like work instead of joy? How you perform caring behaviors while feeling secretly distant? Maybe you're not a bad person. Maybe you're just incapable of authentic attachment. Watch your patterns, getting excited about new relationships, then gradually becoming indifferent, saying, "I love you," while feeling mostly empty, going through relationship motions without real emotional investment. Even family connections can feel forced, obligatory, rather than natural. Psychology says some people never develop secure attachment, usually due to early childhood experiences. They spend their lives mimicking emotional connection without actually feeling it. Right now, examining your closest relationships. How much genuine care do you feel versus how much you pretend to feel? The disturbing possibility. What you call love might just be sophisticated emotional manipulation, including manipulating yourself. Motivated irrationality. Chemistry test results showing your romantic partner has been lying. But instead of confronting the evidence, you find reasons to doubt the test. Maybe the lab made mistakes. Maybe someone tampered with results. Maybe this proves how much you trust them. Motivated irrationality explains why smart people believe obviously false things when the truth threatens something they need to believe. Watch yourself ignore red flags in relationships because being alone scares you. Dismiss financial warnings because facing debt feels overwhelming. Reject health advice because changing habits requires effort. People aren't stupid. They're strategically blind to information that would force uncomfortable changes. Climate change deniers aren't necessarily unintelligent. They're protecting lifestyles that climate action would disrupt. Conspiracy theorists aren't just gullible. They're avoiding feelings of powerlessness, even your own beliefs right now. How many do you hold because they're true versus because they're convenient? Notice how easily you find flaws in evidence that contradicts your views while accepting weaker evidence that supports them. Your brain isn't a truth-seeking machine. It's a comfort-maintaining machine that occasionally stumbles across truth by accident. Motivated irrationality isn't a bug in human thinking. It's the primary feature. Radical evil. During an airport security line, you watch TSA agents search an elderly woman's wheelchair while waving through someone who looks normal. But what if evil isn't about looking dangerous? It's about choosing cruelty when kindness costs nothing. Kant's radical evil suggests some humans don't just do bad things for personal gain. They choose evil because it feels good. Not crimes of passion or desperation. Calculated cruelty for pure enjoyment. School bullies who target the kindest kids. Internet trolls who attack grieving families. People who spread malicious gossip about friends just to watch relationships crumble. They're not getting money, status, or survival advantage. They're getting pleasure from causing pain. Watch yourself. Ever feel a weird satisfaction when someone you dislike fails? Enjoy sharing embarrassing stories about others? feel energized by arguments that hurt people. Radical evil isn't about monsters in horror movies. It's about the ordinary capacity for choosing cruelty when compassion would be just as easy. Right now, think about your last petty, unnecessary meanness. Was there any practical reason for it? Or did some dark part of you simply enjoy being cruel? The disturbing truth, the radical evil, might live in everyone, waiting for permission to emerge. Radical alterity. During a coffee shop conversation, someone describes their childhood trauma, their deepest fears, their most vulnerable moments, and despite nodding sympathetically, you realize you have absolutely no idea what their experience actually feels like. Radical alterity suggests that other people's consciousness is fundamentally unknowable. No matter how much they explain, you'll never truly understand their inner world. Your pain feels urgent and real. Other people's pain sounds like descriptions of something you've never experienced. Even identical situations affect people completely differently. Death of a parent, job loss, heartbreak. Your version and their version might be entirely separate experiences. Notice how you assume others feel things the way you do. When someone says they're depressed, you imagine your version of sadness. When they describe love, you picture your emotional patterns. But what if their depression feels nothing like yours? What if their love is a completely different emotional state? Language creates the illusion that we share experiences, but words might point to entirely different internal realities. Right now, every person you think you understand remains as mysterious as an alien species. Even your closest relationships, built on the assumption that you know each other, when you might be complete strangers sharing the same vocabulary. Civilizational collapse. The power grid fails during a heat wave, and within 48 hours, grocery stores are empty, gas stations run dry, and neighbors start eyeing each other suspiciously. Makes you realize how thin the veneer of civilization really island. Civilizational collapse suggests that complex societies are inherently unstable, held together by fragile systems that could unravel surprisingly quickly. Rome fell, Maya disappeared, Easter Island stripped bare. Every great civilization eventually collapses, usually from internal decay rather than external invasion. Right now, your daily life depends on millions of strangers cooperating perfectly. Farmers growing food, truckers delivering it, engineers maintaining infrastructure, governments preventing chaos. But what happens when supply chains break? When currencies become worthless? When people lose faith in institutions? Notice how quickly civilized behavior disappears during disasters. Looting starts within hours. Social norms evaporate when survival feels threatened. Even routine disruptions reveal the cracks. Internet outages causing widespread confusion. Brief power failures triggering panic buying. Modern civilization is more complex than any previous society, which might make it more vulnerable, not stronger. Climate change, resource depletion, political polarization, economic inequality, stress fractures already visible. Deep down, don't you sometimes sense that this whole elaborate system feels unsustainable? Total depravity. During a wedding ceremony, everyone is smiling, celebrating true love, while half the guests are mentally cataloguing who they'd cheat with if given the chance. Total depravity suggests humans aren't naturally good people corrupted by society. They're naturally corrupt beings, temporarily restrained by social pressure. Strip away consequences, remove observers, eliminate punishment, and most people reveal their true nature. Selfishness, cruelty, dishonesty. Children don't need to be taught to lie, steal, or hurt others, as they do it instinctively. Society spends decades training them not to. Even your kindest moments are helping someone in need. Part of you calculates what you'll get in return. Recognition, good feelings, social credit. Notice how quickly good people become monsters when they think nobody's watching. Road rage, online comments, anonymous surveys revealing shocking opinions. Maybe Christianity got it right accidentally. Humans really are fundamentally broken, just not in the way they meant. Your moral behavior isn't evidence of inner goodness. It's evidence of effective social conditioning and fear of consequences. Cognitive bias. Beyond normal blood test results lies strange disappointment. Part of you wanted an interesting diagnosis to explain your problems. Cognitive bias gets treated as mental error. But what if these thinking patterns actually protect your sanity? Optimism bias makes you expect good outcomes despite bad odds. Without it, depression would be universal. Confirmation bias filters out contradictory information, preserving beliefs that give life meaning and structure. Self-serving bias lets you blame failures on circumstances while claiming credit for success, maintaining confidence needed to keep trying. Without these flaws, you'd face reality directly. Every harsh truth, every depressing statistic, every reason for despair. Therapy patients often feel worse initially because honest self-awareness can be devastating. Maybe biases aren't bugs, they're features preventing complete psychological collapse. Memento mori. Birthday candles being blown out. Everyone cheering about getting older, while secretly calculating how many birthdays might be left. Memento mori, AP, remember you will die, was once whispered to Roman generals during victory parades to keep them humble. Modern society does the opposite. Everything designed to help you forget mortality. Anti-aging creams, retirement planning, medical advances, promising longer life. But what if constantly remembering death actually improved living? Medieval monks kept skulls on their desks. Buddhist meditation includes visualizing your own corpse rotting. Sounds morbid until you realize how it changes priorities. When you truly accept that you have limited time, meaningless activities lose their grip. Petty arguments feel absurd. Authentic relationships become precious. Notice how differently you behave when genuinely reminded of mortality. After someone dies, during health scares, near accidents, suddenly clarity emerges. Most people spend more time planning vacations than contemplating their finite existence. Death isn't life's opposite. It's what gives life urgency and meaning. Moral corruption. Donating to charity at the grocery store checkout, then immediately feeling like you've earned the right to be selfish for the rest of the week. Moral corruption suggests that acting virtuous actually makes people more likely to behave badly afterward, as if good deeds create a balance sheet that justifies future wrongdoing. Studies show people who recall past charitable acts become more willing to lie, cheat, or discriminate. Volunteers at non-profits often display shocking callousness in their personal lives. Even thinking about moral behavior without actually doing it can trigger this effect. People who simply imagine donating money become less generous in real scenarios. Watch yourself. After being extra polite to a difficult customer, don't you feel entitled to complain about them later? After helping someone move, don't you feel justified in being less helpful next time? Moral behavior creates psychological credits that get spent on immoral behavior, meaning your good deeds might actually be making you worse. Narcissistic wound. A co-worker gets promoted over you, and instead of congratulating them, you immediately start listing all their flaws and incompetencies to anyone who'll listen. Narcissistic wound explains why the tiniest slights trigger massive emotional reactions. Your self-image is far more fragile than you want to admit. Someone doesn't respond to your text, rage. Friend cancels plans, personal attack. Stranger doesn't hold the door, deep insult. These aren't reasonable responses to minor inconveniences. They're desperate attempts to protect a self-concept that's constantly under threat. Watch how differently you react to the same criticism depending on your mood. When feeling confident, feedback feels helpful. When feeling insecure, identical words feel like attacks. Your entire personality might be an elaborate defense system built around avoiding situations that expose your fundamental insecurities, even your achievements. Often just ways of proving to yourself and others that you're not as worthless as you secretly fear you are. The wound isn't that someone hurt you. It's that they revealed something you already believed about yourself. Accelerationism, stock market crash headlines. And instead of feeling worried, part of you feels excited that maybe this broken system is finally falling apart. Accelerationism suggests that sometimes the best way to fix things is to make them worse and faster. Why slowly reform corrupt institutions when you could accelerate their collapse and build something better from the ruins? Capitalism creating inequality. Speed up automation until it becomes unsustainable and forces change. Democracy becoming a farce. Let it get so dysfunctional that revolution becomes inevitable. Climate change destroying the planet. Maybe we need catastrophe before people take it seriously. Notice how you sometimes root for disasters. Part of you wants the housing market to crash so you can afford a home. Wants your terrible workplace to fail so something better emerges. Even personal relationships. Sometimes you pick fights to accelerate breakups instead of slowly drifting apart. Accelerationism says suffering is inevitable. So why drag it out? Better to rip the band-aid off quickly than slowly peel it away. The disturbing appeal. Deep down, you might prefer dramatic collapse to gradual decay. Mauvaise foi. You took a mirror selfie for social media, spending 20 minutes getting the perfect candid shot, then captioning it, "Just woke up like this." Mauvaise foi, T, French for bad faith, describes the exhausting performance of pretending your choices aren't choices. I have to work this job when you could quit. I can't help being jealous when jealousy is a choice. That's just who I am, when personality is changeable. Bad faith feels safer than admitting you're free, because freedom means responsibility for your misery. Watch yourself make unavoidable decisions. Staying in relationships that drain you, living in cities you hate, maintaining friendships that feel forced. Each "I have no choice" is really "I'm choosing the familiar over the unknown." Even reading this, part of you wants to dismiss it, because accepting radical freedom would mean acknowledging that your current dissatisfaction, island, chosen. Bad faith isn't lying to others about your constraints. It's lying to yourself about your freedom. Right now, every excuse you make for why your life can't change is probably bad faith protecting you from the terror of infinite possibility. Cave allegory. Netflix autoplay loading the next episode, and you realize you've been binge watching for 6 hours without making a single conscious choice. But turning it off feels harder than continuing the trance. Plato's cave allegory suggests most people are chained prisoners watching shadows on walls, mistaking projections for reality. Social media feeds, news cycles, entertainment. 4. all shadows cast by forces you never see. You mistake these curated illusions for actual life. Ever try explaining to someone why their favorite show is manipulative propaganda? They get angry. Not because you're wrong, but because you're threatening their comfortable cave. Most people prefer familiar illusions to harsh realities. The cave is cozy. The shadows are predictable. Truth requires effort. Even when someone drags you into sunlight, shows you how advertising manipulates your desires, how politics manufactures consent, how relationships repeat programmed patterns, part of you wants to crawl back underground. Reality is exhausting. Shadows are soothing. Right now, countless shadows flicker across your mental walls, and you call them thoughts, opinions, preferences. But what if they're just projections from sources you've never bothered to identify? Political nihilism, voting booth curtain closing, studying the ballot, weighing candidates carefully, then realizing both options serve the same corporate interests with slightly different marketing. Political nihilism suggests democracy is elaborate theater where your vote changes nothing meaningful. Republicans and Democrats argue passionately about social issues while quietly agreeing on economic policies that benefit donors. Left wing, right wing. Same bird. Wars continue regardless of who's elected. Wealth inequality grows under both parties. Surveillance expands. Corporate power increases. Your passionate political debates, arguing over which puppet gets to read the script written by forces you never vote for. Even revolutionary candidates get absorbed into the system or marginalized into irrelevance. The machine always wins. Notice how politics feels like professional wrestling. Dramatic conflicts, predetermined outcomes, audience participation that doesn't affect results. Your civic engagement might be the most elaborate form of powerlessness ever invented, making you feel involved while keeping you completely excluded from real decisions. Eternal, present, calendar notification pops up. Meeting in 5 minutes. But didn't you just check your phone? Wasn't it morning? Where did the day go? Eternal present describes how consciousness actually works. There's only this moment, and your brain constantly tricks you into believing in past and future. Yesterday exists only as neural patterns firing right now. Tomorrow exists only as current imagination. Your childhood memories is happening now. Your future plans, present thoughts, memory isn't accessing stored files. It's reconstructing experiences in the current moment. Every time you remember something, you're creating it fresh. Planning ahead isn't preparing for actual future events. It's current mental activity that might influence later present moments. Strip away the illusion of linear time, and what remains? Just this, and this, and this. An endless series of nows with no real connection between them. Your entire sense of personal history, character development, life narrative, elaborate stories, your present moment consciousness tells itself. Past and future are mental constructs. Only now is real, making your whole life one eternal, disconnected instant. Desire as suffering. Amazon cart, filled with items you need. Clicking purchase, feeling momentarily satisfied. Then, immediately browsing for the next thing to buy. Buddhist philosophy argues that desire itself is the source of all suffering. Not the lack of what you want, but the wanting itself. Every craving creates a gap between current reality and imagined satisfaction. That gap is psychological pain. Hungry, suffering until you eat. Lonely, suffering until you connect. Bored, suffering until you're entertained. Even getting what you want only provides temporary relief, because new desires immediately emerge. Better job, nicer apartment, different relationship, upgraded phone. Notice how satisfaction never lasts. The promotion you desperately wanted becomes normal within weeks. The dream vacation ends. The perfect purchase sits unused. Meanwhile, the brief moments when you want absolutely nothing, walking without destination, sitting without agenda, breathing without trying to be anywhere else, and feel surprisingly peaceful. Maybe contentment isn't about getting everything you want. It's about wanting nothing at all. But modern society depends on your dissatisfaction. Advertising exists to create desires you didn't know you had. Parasitic ego. Phone battery dies during an important conversation, and your immediate panic isn't about missing information. It's about people thinking you're ignoring them. Your ego isn't protecting you. It's feeding off you like a parasite that's convinced you it's essential for survival. Every worried thought about how others perceive you, every need for validation, every defensive reaction to criticism, that's your ego, consuming your mental energy. Watch how exhausted you feel after social interactions, not from connecting with people, but from managing your image, monitoring their reactions, adjusting your performance. Your ego demands constant feeding, compliments, achievements, being right in arguments, having people need you. Without this fuel, it creates anxiety, depression, rage. But what if you stopped feeding it? Stopped caring about looking smart, successful, attractive, interesting? Brief moments when you forget yourself completely. Absorbed in tasks, lost in nature, helping others without thought of recognition. Feel surprisingly peaceful, because without ego maintenance, your actual energy becomes available for living. The parasite has convinced you that without it, you'd disappear. But maybe what would disappear is just the exhausting performance, leaving the real you finally free to exist. Angst. Sunday afternoon. Nothing urgent to do, nowhere to be. And instead of feeling relaxed, you're overwhelmed by a crushing sense of emptiness and dread. Angst isn't anxiety about specific things. It's existential terror about existence itself. Kierkegaard described it as the dizziness of freedom, the nauseating realization that you're completely free to choose, but have no guidance for what to choose. Unlike fear, which has an object, angst has no clear target. You're not afraid of death, failure, or rejection. You're afraid of the very fact that you exist and must make choices without knowing if they matter. Standing in a grocery store aisle, paralyzed by cereal options, not because the choice is difficult, but because the arbitrariness of choosing anything feels overwhelming. Modern life tries to distract you from angst with constant busyness, entertainment, and goals. But in quiet moments, waiting for elevators, lying awake at 3 a.m., walking empty streets, it creeps back. Pure consciousness, confronting the void. Realizing you're a free being in a meaningless universe, forced to create significance from nothing. Angst isn't a disorder to be cured. It's the natural response to being human. Life as disease. Fever breaking after being sick for days. And in that moment of returning to normal, you realize how exhausting it is just to be conscious. Maybe awareness itself is the illness. Some philosophers argue that life is a disease, a temporary infection of matter that normally exists in peaceful, unconscious states. Rocks don't suffer, water doesn't worry, dead things don't experience anxiety, heartbreak, or existential dread. Only living organisms are cursed with the burden of sensation and thought. before you were born. No pain, no stress, no disappointment. After you die, same peaceful state. Life is just a brief, uncomfortable interruption between two periods of perfect tranquility. Even sleep feels like relief, consciousness temporarily switching off, giving you a break from being you. The universe spent billions of years in perfect silence before accidentally creating beings capable of suffering. Now, it's stuck with creatures who can contemplate their own mortality and find it disturbing. Every moment of awareness. It's not matter temporarily malfunctioning, creating the illusion of self before returning to its natural state of unconscious peace. Maybe death isn't life's enemy. It's the cure. Grand narrative, collapse. History textbook from high school. Confidently explaining how humanity progresses from primitive to civilized, ignorant to enlightened, oppressed to free. But what if history doesn't have a direction? Just random events we desperately arrange into comforting stories. Grand narrative collapse describes the death of big, meaningful explanations for human existence. Progress, justice, evolution, enlightenment, all just myths we created to avoid facing chaos. Science would eventually solve everything. Democracy would spread freedom, technology would improve life, education would end ignorance. These stories felt true for centuries. Now they're crumbling. Technology creates new problems faster than it solves old ones. Democracy produces authoritarian leaders. Education spreads misinformation. Medical advances create new diseases. Climate change, political polarization, wealth inequality, suggesting we're not progressing toward anything better, just stumbling through random disasters. Without grand narratives, your individual life loses its backdrop of meaning. You're not part of humanity's noble journey, just a brief accident in cosmic chaos. The collapse is liberating and terrifying. No predetermined destiny, but also no inherent purpose. Illusion of agency. Traffic light turns red. You stop your car, feeling like you made a choice. But 20 other drivers stopped at the exact same moment for the exact same reason. Illusion of agency suggests most of your decisions are just predetermined responses you mistake for free will. Your morning routine, political opinions, career path, even your reaction to this video. All following patterns shaped by genetics, upbringing, social pressure, and brain chemistry. Studies show people's brains begin initiating actions before they're consciously aware of deciding to act. The feeling of choosing happens after your brain has already started the process. You think you chose your breakfast, your clothes, your mood today. But trace each choice backward, and you'll find it was determined by factors you never controlled. Even your resistance to this idea, predictable response based on your psychological makeup. Watch yourself make spontaneous decisions, usually exactly what someone with your background, personality, and circumstances would choose. Free will feels real because you experience the outcome of unconscious processes as conscious choice. Your sense of being, the author of your life, might be the brain's most convincing illusion. Decentered, subject, behind every thought you think is yours. Multiple competing voices, unconscious drives, social programming, and biological imperatives, all claiming to be the real you. Decentered subject suggests there's no unified self making decisions, just a collection of psychological systems taking turns at the controls. Your rational mind wants to save money. Your emotional mind wants to spend it. Your social mind wants approval. Your survival mind wants security. Which one is actually you? Sometimes you're generous and kind. Other times you're selfish and cruel. Rather than having a consistent personality, you're more like a committee of different selves that rarely agree. Notice how you can hold contradictory beliefs simultaneously. Love someone while resenting them. Want change while fearing it. Crave attention while avoiding it. Psychoanalysis, Buddhism, neuroscience all suggest the unified self is fiction. No central command center, no consistent identity, just competing mental processes, creating the illusion of coherent selfhood, even your sense of being in control. Probably just whichever psychological subsystem is currently dominant, mistaking its temporary control for permanent identity. Who you are changes from moment to moment. Ontological anxiety, beyond your daily worries about money, relationships, or career, lurks a deeper terror that has no name or specific object. Ontological anxiety isn't fear of particular things going wrong. It's existential dread about the very fact that existence exists at all. Why is there something rather than nothing? Why does consciousness emerge from matter? Why do you experience being you instead of being someone else or no one? Late at night, staring at the ceiling, you sometimes feel it. The overwhelming strangeness of existing in a universe that shouldn't logically exist, as a self that shouldn't logically be possible. Unlike normal anxiety, which has solutions, ontological anxiety has no cure. You can't fix the fundamental weirdness of being conscious matter contemplating its own consciousness. Philosophy tries to explain existence, but every answer just pushes the mystery one level deeper. Even if we discovered why the universe exists, we'd still wonder why those laws exist. During quiet moments, walking alone, falling asleep, spacing out, you glimpse the cosmic absurdity of your situation. An impossible being in an impossible reality. Temporarily convinced, both make sense. Arrested development throughout your adult life. Still seeking approval from parents who disappointed you decades ago. Still avoiding challenges that scared you as a teenager. Still using coping mechanisms you developed at age 12. Arrested development suggests most people stop psychologically growing at some point in childhood or adolescence, then spend the rest of their lives as sophisticated children, pretending to be adults. Your relationship patterns mirror your family dynamics. Your work anxieties echo school fears. Your romantic choices repeat early attachment wounds. Notice how you still feel like a kid playing dress-up in adult situations. Job interviews, serious conversations, making major decisions, part of you waiting for a real adult to take over. Even your proudest achievements, often just elaborate ways of finally getting the recognition your inner child still craves. Watch other adults closely. Beneath the professional facades, most are stuck at whatever age they experience their deepest wounds or greatest fears. The mature behavior you perform daily, learned responses, covering up the same emotional needs and reactions you had at 7 years old. Growing older isn't growing up. Beneath dangerous knowledge, beneath every major scientific discovery, lies information that probably should have remained hidden. Nuclear physics gave us clean energy and weapons that could end civilization. Genetic engineering promises cures and the ability to create biological weapons. Artificial intelligence might solve every problem or make humans obsolete. Knowledge isn't neutral. Some truths are genuinely dangerous to know. Philosophers call this forbidden knowledge, information that makes the world more dangerous simply by existing. Even personal knowledge. Learning your partner's browsing history, discovering what friends really think of you, Understanding your family's hidden resentments often destroys relationships that ignorance kept functional. Psychology research reveals how easily humans can be manipulated, but that same research gets used by advertisers and politicians to exploit people. Sometimes ignorance actually is bliss. Some secrets protect rather than harm. Some illusions serve important functions. Notice how often you're happier before learning certain truths, how knowledge sometimes feels like losing innocence rather than gaining wisdom. The tree of knowledge wasn't forbidden arbitrarily. Some information genuinely makes life worse.